I worked at Paris FC. I would never invest in Paris FC, but they found the right investor for them.
People don't realize how analogic the sport industry is in general.
He was talking to Florentino Pérez. The reality is my business, I'm going to sell Casemiro to Manchester United for 80 million. That's going to be the revenue.
How this sponsorship translate into real business results.
Every time I think that I understand well enough the sports industry, there's something that surprises me where I'm like, I didn't see that one coming. And they actually moved to making 350 million of revenue through the D2C platform.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of Gameday. We're starting the third season and today we're recording from Riyadh. We are here at the World Football Summit with a very special guest. Thank you so much for being here. It's really a pleasure to have you. We've known each other for a long time.
10 years now, yeah.
I was really looking forward to have this conversation. I always like to start this by letting every guest introduce themselves. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your career and also what you're doing as at LaSource,
Yep.
the company that you founded some years ago.
Cool. Well, look, great having you too. Pleasure shared. It's been a while that we've been in touch for a little while, and now like being on the other side, I'm a consumer of your content as well. So glad to be on the other side. But yeah, long story short, I'm Sam. Created LaSource 6 years ago now. Basically, so I come from the sports world. I'm a failed athlete, like a lot of us, a little bit like you too. My brother was a professional football player, didn't make it. And then I realized what is going to make me wake up in the morning is like working in the sports industry. And so at the end of my studies, I worked at Paris FC for 1 year. And then I was like, I thought I wanted to work in a sports club, but the reality was it was too slow, like did a million things, but nothing at the same time. And so I decided to go on the startup side of things, which was exciting. In 2010, 2011, it was still like emerging. It wasn't like a huge thing. And I liked the entrepreneurial mindset. I always knew that I wanted to build stuff rather than arrive in a place and like just manage it. And so I found like the mix of sport and tech was absolutely perfect for me. And long story short, wasn't a first startup, didn't work out. Created a second one that was LiveLike. Originally was VR. VR, we did a great job. It was an incredible journey. But the reality is that nobody consumes content in VR. Just the market didn't pick up. And so in 2019, 2020, we were kind of at that pivot moment for LiveLike that was moving from VR to fan engagement. And I was kind of in my own thoughts, like, what do I want to do next with my career? And we were taking in a program that's called the UEFA Innovation Hub. And that ended up being such a pivotal moment in my career. Met the guys from Greenfly over there. And I saw the technology and I was like, it's amazing. But then they weren't picked by UEFA as the finalists. And then I went to see the guy at UEFA and I was like, why didn't you pick this technology? He was like, they presented it saying, we work like this with the NBA. You're going to work like this as UEFA. And I was like, this is going to be my opportunity. I'm half French, half American. I'm going to get the American startups, but I have the European culture. I'm going to help them develop on the territory. And so this is how we created LaSource, picking what we believe to be the best tech startups, representing them, and then opening up our network to them to help them penetrate and like kind of bring that change that we believe in the industry of like, what are the new technologies? How do we help organizations continue to grow their revenue? And so long story short, moved from doing only that work for the startups to doing a lot of consulting, because on the other side, big governing bodies actually need help also in their digital transformation. And so this is what brings us here.
Yeah, you said it's very interesting. You started with the startup, then moving to the governing bodies, because in sports there's a lot of need for that technological background and understanding.
Yep.
Because people don't realize how not digital, or I don't know how to say that, how analogic the sport industry is in general.
I mean, it's crazy, right? Because the sport industry is not super advanced in terms of digital. However, there's a lot of money being poured in because everybody's excited about sports. So like making yourself a space in the sports industry is exciting to everyone. Everybody wants to be part of it. So there's irrational money being thrown in the sports industry. On the other side, so tech companies create great products, but they don't have a market fit because the clubs and the leagues and the organizations aren't necessarily advanced enough to understand the value, spend the money on them, etc. And so it's that whole gap that we're looking to bridge on our side to say, hey, we're going to help you identify which ones are the good technologies. We're going to help them shape their business strategy, everything that they need, their go-to-market, their pricing, etc., and then present it to the governing bodies, to the clubs, to the leagues. Say, this is how we set it up. This is why we think they're the best. We come with the stamp of having done the due diligence, say this is the best technology in that space. This is how it's going to help you, and make sure that they know how to talk in the right proper way. And I think that it's incredible because there's more and more technologies coming to this space. It's more and more complicated to get it in. The sales cycle are incredibly slow. And this is what we're looking to do to help everybody win from it. The clubs, the leagues, the different organizational bodies, and then the tech startups, the right ones that have potential, that create value, help them accelerate their go-to-market strategy.
Because it's incredible. And I've seen a lot of, also during my journey, a lot of startups that create great products that really give answer to a problem that the industry have.
Yeah.
But when you see the business plan and the sales projections, they don't realize how difficult the sport industry is to penetrate.
Yeah.
And how long it takes on the sales cycle, what you were saying.
Yeah. It's exactly that, right? I'll take the example of LiveLike because obviously I'm a co-founder and like I'm still in that very entrepreneurial journey. And so 5 years ago, 6 years ago, we were talking about to everyone about gamification, community loyalty. And we're not inventing it, right? Social media has been around social. The engagement works. People want to participate. They want to be the content creators. And then the loyalty programs work in airline companies and hotel chains, right? Like, so we're just taking the best use cases of all the industry, putting in a tech stack to bring it to the organizations. It was like 5 years of education. And now we're at that point where we have huge collaborations with the likes of Canal+, beIN Sports, STC in this region, PSG, Chelsea. So we have a lot of like those big brands that are now behind us, which means that everybody's coming after. And on the other side, I have a Gameday. So Gameday is a dubbing and subbing company. Product is amazing. You want to record this podcast and like distribute it in indie, we can translate it, right? It's not going to be perfect, right? There's growth, but the product is incredible. But the technology is incredible. But there's also a lot to help staff in terms of the products, the servicing. How do we actually understand how we work with a Bundesliga versus how we work with a PSG, right? There's all those elements of like, okay, technology at the service of the problems of the organization and at the growth of their revenues. And this is what we're helping organizations with. But it's really important to understand. You're going to do a business plan. You're going to promise a 3-year plan to your investors. Truth is, to get to the phase 1 of that is going to take you 2 years of education, relationship, like doing all the things that we know we have to do, which is travel the world to meet the people in person and win their trust.
Because the reality is, as a sport industry, it's personal relationship driven. It's driven by personal relationship, 100%.
You know what? I was talking to one of the guys, our contacts at Real Madrid, and he told me something. I was like, he was talking to Florentino Pérez, and he was like coming from the US with all tons of ideas. And he was saying, we need to do this. And it was like, tranquilo. The reality is my business, I'm going to sell Casemiro. It was when Casemiro was sold to Manchester United for 80 million. That's going to be the revenue. Whether you choose X or Y in terms of technology might have a marginal difference of 50K of revenue at the end of the year. I'm sorry, but I don't really care. So it doesn't really matter who I choose. So then that is when technology is super important, but the relationship, the servicing, like where you're going to be able to bring as a human is like fundamental in our industry.
I think it goes also back to the values of a sport and how sport brings people together. This is an industry that needs people to be together. It's based on those relationships.
And we know it, right? Like with our brothers being in sports, it's like, it's not necessarily like Morata, like he's a forward. It's not necessarily that the number 10 behind him is better. Like he is the best player in the pitch. It's how complementary and how they're going to work together and like fulfill what, the hidden job behind the scene and all of that. And that personal relationship off the pitch. This is how you create the connections. It's very true in the sports industry as well.
And also the industry has something very unique, because if you think about any other business in the world, all the revenue that you generate, take a football club, all the revenue that a football club generates through marketing, through selling merchandise, through ticketing, through all the revenue sources, it's not invested back into the business. It's invested into the sport, in bringing the players, in being there, because ultimately, the best business plan in sport is winning. But you can always win. So I always say that a strong content strategy, a strong business strategy help you win more when you win and lose less when you lose.
Exactly. And I think that it's the biggest target. Like coaches have the same approach at a sports performance level, right? Like your week cannot be dictated on whether you win or lose the weekend before, right? It can be incredibly good if you win the weekend before and horrible at the weekend if you lose the weekend before. So that's exactly the same thing in the business. How do you manage to have a brand that is bigger than your day-to-day results so that you have a structure that's like as stable as possible? And I think that it's an incredible opportunity for us working in the industry right now, that now the markets have capped, right? Like the rights aren't going to go much higher. So now the clubs, to drive their revenues, have to look at technology. How do they optimize every vertical inside the club? And this is where technology is going to be at the service of that, to go get those marginal gains that will allow them to continue growing. And I think that that whole capping of the media rights value will bring that professionalization of the sport and just benefit to everyone at the end of the day.
It's interesting because we are in this transitional moment where people don't really know what to do because, as you said, the traditional model, the sport industry has relied on media rights for the last 20 years.
Yeah.
And that has been the primary business model.
Yeah.
80% of the revenue or 70% of the revenue were coming from that revenue source. But suddenly, things start changing. Consumers start consuming content differently. You need to monetize it. So now, to be successful on the business side, you cannot wait for one big paycheck.
Yeah.
But you have to do multiple things to get the same money.
Exactly.
So it's multiple business models that fits into one.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the biggest challenges that some investors are having when coming into sports.
Yeah.
Not really understanding all the different revenue sources and opportunities.
Yeah.
And looking at just one big bucket, and they're trying to put you into a box. Okay, but
Yeah.
what's your business model?
Yeah.
This is your business model. No, sport is about many different business models.
Yeah. And that's super interesting, right? Working a lot with VCs and private equities, it's like that understanding of what's happening on the day-to-day operational side of things. The reality, as you said, people were just expecting that revenue from rights. They kind of optimized ticketing and merchandising because those were the major sources of revenue. They optimized the sponsorship element of sponsoring the jersey. But the reality is that we've been on that model for 20 years where it was like, you need more revenue in venue, build a bigger stadium and project for it. Like try to increase the value, try to internationalize a little bit your sponsors. But the reality is now what happens on the first party data capture, right? Like you've never been focused on that. This is the gold mine of every social media platform. How do we work on that, right? And it takes multiple layers of from top of the funnel acquisition of people from social media to capture first party data on your proprietary platform and all the ways in which you can capture that data and share it with people. You have to become more intelligent. You have to understand your IP better as an organization to be able to drive a company strategy in a direction that is unique to you versus the just general standard of the TV price that would just coming in your pocket according to your ranking in the championship.
And also, it's about understanding your audience, your data better, because the sponsorship model, which is has been historically the second largest revenue source for the sport industry, has become more complex.
Yep.
And sponsors are more sophisticated now in terms of what they ask, what they want. It's not anymore about just the brand visibility. It's like, how this sponsorship translate into real business results.
Yeah.
So how are you working on that space? What are the companies or the product that you think are at the gold standard and the absolutely every sport organization in the world should have to bring or to demonstrate somehow that return investment back to their sponsors?
And that's an incredibly hard one, right? Because historically it was just like going to sell the sponsorship. It was like a VIP suite, it was all about that local element, right? And now with the shifting industry and the reach on social media and the internationalization of communities, one thing that's incredibly hard, and like going back to the LiveLike example again, is like, if you don't have the infrastructure to capture your first party data and consolidate it, you'll only be able to address a certain typology of sponsors that are going to be after the reach, right? But so you need to align so many layers inside a commercial like a strategy for it. You need to be able to capture the first party data. You need to be able to feed that infrastructure. You need to be able to have a sales rep that knows how to sell digital, right? It's not only going to be about the reach that you get through the linear kind of broadcast. It's going to be how qualified is your data and how many people do you have in that database that I can actually segment and target, right? And so you need to have the digital person that knows how to sell it. You have to be able to address the sponsors that are are interested in not the reach, but also like the quality of the people at the bottom, right? And so you actually have to do an exercise as an organization of classifying the different typology of fans, what information you have on them, and who you can address on the market. And so when you look at all of that, you have to build a tech stack, and clubs and leagues aren't technology companies, right? They're starting to become them, but you have to teach them that you have to invest, you have to structure it in a way. And if you deploy a plan, you're going to generate revenue, but you're not just going to replace that short-term money that you got without doing anything anymore, without putting some investment and some effort in building a strategy.
When I hear you talking and about what you do and the way you see the industry, I feel very, very close, because when I was at Meta and at Twitter, people were asking me, what's your job? Like, what's your day to day? And the best way I was describing it, it's like, I'm a translator. I translate engineering language into sports language, and sports language into engineering language. Because sometimes when you talk to startup, when you talk to people that are more of a technical background and they think about problem solving in a way, it's not the same, or it doesn't address really the problems that the industry has. And I remember when I was there, I was talking to the product team. Sometimes they would say, oh, we have developed this amazing product for sports. And I'm like, this is not going to work. We need to tweak that a little bit. And then they say, oh, we have developed this product. We need the spring to use it. And it's like, okay, how can I make or position this product to sports clubs, leagues, to really create value for them?
And that's what's so hard, right? Like, the sports industry is one where it can not only be a product team thinking about like other organizations and other industries who have succeeded and just think that they're going to be able to deploy it, because the needs are very different. And so I think that it is, and because of the relationship element as well, like servicing well, the servicing part is fundamental in the sports industry. So a lot of your innovation and product, like the efforts that you're going to put into product, should be through the market feedback that you get and like solving problems for organizations, rather than thinking, I'm going to create a product that people are going to be willing to invest in to get future revenue. It's going to be more like, how can I solve 4 problems to begin with? And then once I create the relationship, how do I layer in those value added services on top of it? But it's a really interesting exercise. And that's also a little bit like the Facebook strategy in sports, which moved from being super ambitious to like kind of reshaping it in a certain format. It's because the social media industry have had to have a look at product, and they have very a product decision making had to be done at a product level, right? Like pure KPIs. It's not a sentimental one. It's a really product performance kind of 100%. And the sports industry, to work with the clubs, is a little bit different, I think.
Yeah, and in the sports, you always have that sense of proudness, of emotion that it's hard to translate sometimes into spreadsheet. And this is something. This is a thing that I always tell, a story I tell. I was sitting in a meeting where we were discussing how we were going to allocate. At the time, we had a big ambition of by different sports rights where we were launching Facebook Watch. That was 2017, 2018. And we were discussing with different sport properties to get some premium content, live games. We did the deal with Ligue, we did the deal with CONMEBOL and with UEFA in Latin America. And I remember sitting in a room with some product people, the product people of that were launching Facebook Watch, or the video platform and the video ecosystem. And at some point, I had one engineer saying, but wait a second, why are we investing into all this content? When, if we look at the numbers, I see these people doing cats videos, and the engagement is way higher. But when it doesn't make sense. And one of the KPIs that we were looking at was cost per watch hour. So we were looking at how much content we were putting in the platform, how many watch hours we were generating, and based on the budget we were putting there, how much did it cost? So it was like a way of measuring the efficiency. And the engineers were saying, but these people creating cats videos are generating much more video views. So we should be investing into these people, not in the sport. And that's where you realize, like, okay, there's a misconnection here. And if you only look at the spreadsheet, you don't get the full picture.
And that's the thing, right? And we know it because we're in this industry, right? But I'm just taking the example. I read an article recently about the Louis Vuitton family. So the son of the Louis Vuitton owner acquires Pérez FC, and he moves from a world where nobody was stopping him to everybody in the street stopping him and saying thank you. And like, there's that element of the sports industry that is very different. Like, yeah, Cat's videos will work as well, but what is the actually beyond the sport, beyond the metric on your sport? What is the value for the owner of the club? And this is why also the club valuations are super complicated in sports, right? Because it's like, what are your metrics? They're not your standard typical financial metrics.
No valuation is sustained.
And you kind of take 2 times the revenue of the club and the potential. It never actually makes sense at the end of the day. It's just like, that it's going to keep rising. And for the moment, it feels like that's one place that is really uncapped, is the value of the clubs for the moment versus the media rights. And that's what's interesting. But all the side effects of like being in the sports industry and working, there's a lot of non-measurable metrics of value that actually have a huge importance, because the reality is, like, locally, the association of your brand, if you have another business to carry it, like, that's where you're going to get the value out of it versus the pure sports performance side of things. But when it comes to Facebook or the big tech giants, they don't care about all of that. It's just about their rational, pragmatic, Amazon coming to Ligue 1, getting enough subscribers on their Prime kind of subscription, and then leaving. I have my KPIs. I was here for user acquisition. I had that many more users on my platform. I don't need to reinvest in that because I know that I'm not going to go get more users. And that's what's very different in our industry as well now.
Yeah, and now that you mentioned the French the French market, and Amazon and what happened with the French league, what's your view or your vision of everything what's happening?
I think it's a blessing
Because
with guys.
Yeah, because we can say that French league has been the first big league, major league, in really collapsing from a media.
Collapsing is the right term. Yeah.
From a media standpoint, and from that collapse, now they have to build everything from scratch, but with the pain of collapsing without being ready to collapse.
Correct. And that's the reality of every league. But just to take a step back on the French situation, it's one where, as an agency, we genuinely believe in people working together now. Your club in the same league is not really your competitor from a business standpoint. From a sports performance, yes, but from a business standpoint, it's not. And so what Ligue 1 didn't do well is, like, Canal Plus was an incredible partner. And at one point, different players were coming in. They changed. They broke that relationship with the historical right holder that, the Premier League hasn't done, Bundesliga hasn't done, nobody else has done. So that's where they keep getting the same amount of local revenue on it, because there's still that element of fear. But when Canal Plus realized that they could replace Ligue 1, that's when Ligue 1 started being in trouble, right? So now they move from different, right holders to different right holders, all not working well, to the point where they have to go D2C. I think that at the point where they went to DAZN, I think that that's where the opportunity was for them to say, hey, okay, DAZN is coming in, but let us anticipate the development of the platform. So they kind of did it, but they didn't do it in a way where it was like, we're going to listen to the market, but if it's more rational to go D2C, we're going to go D2C. So they kind of had to develop the platform in an urgent manner. Kudos to them. Hasn't failed. Honestly, like, that's one thing that the team has done very well internally, because we know OTT is hard. It didn't break. We've been seeing the content, so kudos to them on that. And so now they're seeing that because of the different strategies that they put in place, they have a certain number of subscribers that is very decent, right? And now it's how you get to the next level and what do you do on top of your platform. So become a media company, except they have a clean turf, right? They don't have the historical legacy of very expensive hardware, et cetera. So they can think about it the right way. And there are plenty of ways in which a league can be reinvented. Now, the reality is that I think they communicated around 1.2 million subscribers. Let's say the average subscription is at around 17 euros, right? They're under 200 million, whereas they were making 400 million in the previous cycle with DAZN. But I think that the story is not there. Can they actually move to making 350 million of revenue through the D2C platform? But afterwards, can they capitalize on the data that they're getting and all those news and knowledge? And this is where they are the first one. So LFP moved from being that company that was like at the bottom of the top 5 in European organizations to, like, everybody wanted to talk to them. Like, How is it working? How are you working from the inside? What's the information? So they're capturing a ton of information right now about how to go about that market. The only thing I would say to those leagues is like anticipate it. We work with the Austrian league, for example, in terms of like they were supposed to go D2C. Having 1 year before going to market was a luxury that the LFP didn't have. But I think that every league right now should anticipate that in a better way to know their business model, to start acquiring user knowledge, and to start shifting from that pure league selling rights to that tech kind of organization that understands tech well enough to know what they can and cannot do if they have to go.
I think La Liga, for example, in Spain is doing a very good job on that. You can agree the study works, doesn't work, but at least they have their own OTT. They're putting non-football content.
Yeah.
I think the focus is now, the people argue sometimes, but they don't have subscribers, but the focus is now about growing the subscribers or they paying rights. That doesn't make sense. But I think that it's an experiment. Like in case tomorrow the world ends and the media companies decide not to pay us, we at least have some experience in-house. And that's something LFP didn't have. And as you said, it was I think a very challenging situation.
Yeah.
And just the fact that the product is arriving to the user is a huge success.
And you know what? Like genuinely, there's less money in French football right now. And so there's private investor owning different clubs. But the reality is that in European clubs, our results haven't been as good in a few years. Ever since like we started paying people less. And there's obviously PSG, that's one, but then you have Marseille, Monaco, you have different Lyon. The fact that the revenues are lower hasn't had a massive impact on the quality of the league, if not the other way around, because the reality is like, as you said, all the money that was getting from the media rights just allowed for clubs to not look at how much they were spending for their second left back in their club, right? And so they were overpaying him by $100K a year. Now they can't do that anymore. Does it impact the sports performance? No, just makes them a more rational business.
Yeah. And what's your view on the investment of LVMH in Paris FC? You mentioned you've been at the club. I don't know if you're a fan of the club.
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting brand.
Yeah.
And Paris is the only main city in Europe where you have only one main club. So the opportunity, when you see that from behind, you think about Madrid. You have Real Madrid, Atletico, two big clubs, but then you have Rayo Vallecano, Getafe, Leganés, higher clubs. Barcelona, also two clubs, Real Madrid, Barcelona, Espanyol. London, many clubs.
Yeah.
And three big clubs. It's true that Paris was there with just PSG.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is a personal perception or not, but sometimes I feel that PSG, it's a bit disconnected from the Paris identity in a way, because with all the investment that has come, the ownership from Qatar that have done amazing things and achieved amazing success.
Yeah.
But on the other side, it kind of lost the connection. I don't know if it's a personal perception. So I feel that Paris FC can fill that gap.
PSG have done a pretty good job at keeping their fan base involved and growing it in a way that they're not, even though like it's incredible amounts of money so far away from your fans, but they've actually done a great job at. PSG has some of the best fans, right? Like the atmosphere for away matches like PSG is like incredible. So they've done a pretty good job. But to get back to the original point of Paris, I worked at Paris FC. I have peers from the industry that I know very well who invested in the previous run with Paris FC. And I was like, I would never invest in Paris FC. Like my feedback was like, they don't have a location. They don't have anything. They played in the 13th. They had offices in the 12th. No, they played in the 12th, had offices in the 13th, trained in the suburbs. Like it had no identity. Nobody coming at the venues, regardless of third division, second division, etc. And they had a tough time coming to first division. So it's like, but they found the right investor for them, right? They found the local Parisian one, luxury, who want to create a bit of a different image, and all of a sudden moves from a club who even with free tickets had a tough time like reaching 2,000-3,000 fans, so like being packed in most of the matches in a 19,000 seats stadium. So it's an incredibly interesting one, and it's one where every time I think that I understand well enough the sports industry, there's something that surprises me where I'm like, fuck, I didn't see that one coming. And I didn't see that like the investors coming at Paris FC. And the truth is that now that everything is coming together, they're kind of building it in the right way. Their team is very coherent. They're struggling a little bit, but I think they're going to figure it out. There's people coming to the matches and they have a room to take, as you said. And I think it's very much like Real Madrid, Atletico Madrid. Like you can't compare the Premier League to anything, but you can have that like high fancy bougie excellence kind of vision and the more local people from the city, etc. I think Paris FC has indeed a great place to put it.
I'm interested to see how the rivalry between Paris and PSG develops, because it's a pretty unique case where you have stadiums right across the street from each other.
Yeah. I'm wondering, for the moment, Paris FC is playing the good friends of PSG and PSG, the good friends of Paris FC and stuff. The one thing like in France, PSG is like it's like the Martians of like the French League One. They're so far from other teams that the teams don't even dare to compare themselves to PSG. So I think like there's still a gap. It really depends on how much investment they're going to put and how much like in the long run Paris FC manages to like stabilize in the top first tier, and to what extent when can Paris FC kind of like get a draw against PSG or start winning or like create a little story. Then you could start creating the momentum around it. But I think we still have a few years before we get there.
Yeah, but you can start, I think, building from not from the sports side. For the sports side, I think they are miles away. And there's few years, they need few years to, as you said, stabilize and run the operations and everything. But from the storytelling standpoint, like being the underdog of the city, like I think they have a massive opportunity in there, and the fact that both stadiums are just right across the street can help develop something unique and special. You only have that in Liverpool, maybe, so between Everton and Liverpool, and Liverpool, that the stadiums are very close. But there are not many other berries right across the street. You have the things across the street.
Yeah, look, it's super interesting, and it's an interesting one also. Just like to get back to the brand element, Paris FC, they have the Paris brand in it, and so now it's good and stuff. But I do think that from a like that cultural element, there were like other clubs with bigger potential, like Red Star, and like now Versailles is trying to do something that's interesting, and also like with a strategy that's interesting as well. It's just hard to anticipate like how well Paris FC is going to do, because truth is like if they go back to Ligue 2, what becomes of the club, right? And like all these, like that's the thing about like open leagues in Europe. Like it's always challenging because the reality is like the scenario of one bad year, one issue, you go down, and then coming back up will be super challenging. So it's hard to anticipate, but I think it is definitely exciting to see.
Depending on the at the end, that's true. Like the sport performance, it's so important to the core of your business, and you need to be ready in case the sport falls, because it can happen.
And that's the hardest part of the sports industry, right? Like it's getting back to the like valuations and all of that. It's like kind of, you have to be as detached from the results as possible, but the results have such an impact in your business that like, how do you find that right balance? That's a challenging one.
Where do you see in all the things that we've discussed, where do you see now the biggest opportunities? We are in the moment where the traditional model is challenged. Media rights is not anymore the main driver of revenue. So where, if you were sitting as a chairman of any sport organization, where do you think the sport organizations need to invest?
I think that I'm biased, but I think there's a huge opportunity of using the technologies in a very good way, because as mentioned earlier, like there's a lot of investment. So there's a lot of good technologies that can serve your purposes. So having a club that really understands that and takes that next angle of we're a media company first and foremost, and we have to get as much data in as possible and as much reach as possible externally to actually exist beyond the rights money that we're getting. So I think that there's a huge opportunity there. I think that like if you ask me which kind of models I love Atletico Bilbao, of making the most out of your region and making sure that in your territory you create much more than just like the appetite for money, but the appetite for belonging. So I think that as companies, clubs will have a chance to differentiate now and create real IP, real value, real identities that you need to be able to capitalize on. I think that one of the angles where Paris FC can do very well is if they do well at benefiting from the local talent in Paris. That's a huge opportunity for them. So yeah, if I had to choose two, it would be like going down the tech angle and like really outstanding at that level. And then afterwards, it's like still investing on those solid, like local community. I think just as an entrepreneur for LaSource, what I'm hoping is that people don't come to me for money because otherwise they'll leave for money. And I think there's a big opportunity for clubs to start having people come to them for the values and for what they are versus only think about the money first.
And I think sports is one of the few spaces and few industries that can really do that. That you can people come just for passion.
Yeah.
They come for passion to work on it, and also they come for passion just to consume the content.
Yeah.
And that's like it's unique.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, do you want to go to the next startup because they've had the biggest raise recently, or do you want to go to the startup that's more bootstrapped, but that has a product and you want to build something together that's not pressured by the immediate revenue, but the growth is built on the culture and what you're building as a team.
Yeah, sometimes when you hear or you read bios of different investors, successful investors, at the end they always say that what's behind the real success is not the technology, it's the people, it's the culture you build.
Yeah,
and with sport, we already have a very good baseline where culture matters a lot, and I think the industry needs to go back and invest more in those values. I totally agree with you on that point.
That's the thing, right? There's almost a thing in entrepreneurs is like, how much did you raise, Kike? I don't care how much you raise. How much revenue are you creating, right? And it's the same thing. Like for an athlete, I hope the conversation moves from like, how much are you making to what's your title? What's your history? You were a tier 2 player, but you made all the right decisions to live the best experiences in life. And I think that's what you're going to take away at the end of the day. So yeah.
So with that final message, we're gonna close this episode. Sam, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for making the time, and looking forward to repeat this conversation in some months' time and talk about the exciting projects you're doing.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me. It was a blast. It was a lot of fun.